What if I told you the Navy SEALs existed before the Navy SEALs? Men who swam into darkness, carrying nothing but explosives, knives, and their courage. Men who struck at the heart of Nazi Germany and vanished without a trace. These are the unseen heroes of World War II, the first American frogmen. And this is their story. Beneath the cold, gray waters of the Atlantic, there were men who fought a war the world never saw. No tanks, no planes, no crowds cheering their names. Just knives, explosives, and sheer courage. Men who slipped beneath the waves to face an enemy that couldn't even see them coming. These were the first American warriors of the deep. The ancestors of the modern Navy SEALs, the Underwater Demolition Teams, or UDTs. And during the final years of World War II, they would take on a mission so secret, so dangerous, that even most of their fellow soldiers never knew it happened. The Nazis were building something no one had ever seen before. Vast underground fortresses, hidden along the French coast. Gigantic U-boat bunkers, carved into concrete thicker than any bomb could pierce. They were the nerve centers of Germany's naval war, the beating heart of Hitler's Atlantic defense stocked to win the war. These fortresses had to fall, but you couldn't bomb them from above. They were buried deep, sealed by steel and sea dot, so the only way in was from below. In the summer of 1944, a handful of American divers were sent on a mission that would change naval warfare forever. They weren't called heroes. They weren't even expected to survive. But what they accomplished, hidden beneath the waves, would help turn the tide of World War II. This is their story, the unseen heroes who blew up Nazi secrets and vanished back into the sea dot before the world knew the word SEAL, before frogmen became legends. There were the Underwater Demolition Teams, the Navy's first ghosts of the deep dot. It all began in 1943, halfway across the world in the Pacific. The United States was struggling to take back island after island from Japan. Each assault faced the same nightmare: reefs, mines, and underwater traps that shredded landing craft before Marines could even reach the shore. Admiral Kelly Turner had seen enough. He demanded a new kind of warrior, men who could swim ahead of the fleet, scout the beaches, and clear the way. And so, on a quiet stretch of coastline in Fort Pierce, Florida, the Navy created something the world had never seen: a small experimental unit of divers, engineers, and demolition experts. They trained in total secrecy. No headlines, no medals, just pain, salt water, and explosions. Their unofficial motto was simple: first in, last out. Training was brutal, weeks of swimming miles in rough seas, stripping down to little more than shorts, a mask, and a knife. They had to learn how to dive without air tanks, how to breathe calmly while the ocean tried to drown them, how to set explosives in complete darkness. One recruit wrote in his diary, "You couldn't tell where your heartbeat ended and the sea began." Every day, the water took something from you: your breath, your fear, your weakness. Only the toughest survived. Those who did were given a title that sounded almost mythical: naked warriors. Because when the time came to fight, they would enter the water with nothing but courage and explosives strapped to their chests. These were America's first underwater commandos. And soon, their skills would be tested in the greatest invasion in human history, D-Day. But before the storm hit Normandy, these men had to do the impossible: swim through enemy waters in the dark of night to prepare the beaches for thousands of soldiers who had no idea they were being protected by ghosts. The world would remember the soldiers who landed on the beaches, but it would forget the divers who made it possible. June 1944. The world was about to witness the largest invasion in human history. Thousands of ships, hundreds of thousands of men, all converging on one coastline, Normandy. But long before the first soldier stepped onto the sand, a different kind of battle had already begun. Beneath the waves, For weeks, small groups of American divers had been sent to recon the beaches. Their orders: map the coastline, find obstacles, and destroy anything that could stop the invasion. These men belonged to UDT-11 and UD-12, two of the Navy's most secret units. At night, they slipped into the icy Channel waters, carrying only a compass, a waterproof notepad, and sticks of explosives sealed in wax. They swam for miles, sometimes just a few feet below German machine gun nests. One mistake, one splash too loud, and they'd never be seen again. The beaches were littered with death traps, steel hedgehogs, mines attached to wooden poles, barbed wire hidden just below the surface. Hitler's engineers had turned the coast into a fortress. If the Allies landed unprepared, the invasion would fail before it even began. That's why these divers went in first, alone, unseen, with nothing but courage and time ticking against them. They worked in pairs. One would measure and sketch. The other would plant explosives by hand, underwater, in total darkness. Then they'd swim back, silently, before the timed charges blew the obstacles sky high. We could feel the shockwave through our chests, one diver later recalled. You didn't need to see the explosion. You could feel it in your bones. Every mission took hours. Many never made it back. The currents were brutal, and the cold could stop a man's heart in minutes. But night after night, they cleared path after path, invisible corridors through the Nazi defenses. On June 6, 1944, did they? Those cleared lanes saved thousands of lives. The amphibious landing craft had safe routes to shore because the UDTs had already mapped and blown open the way. As artillery thundered and chaos erupted above, the divers were still in the water, marking lanes with small buoys, guiding the invasion from below. They were the first Americans on those beaches, and the last ones to leave the water dot, but their mission wasn't over. Just days later, whispers began spreading through Allied intelligence, reports of massive underground U-boat bases along the French coast. Concrete bunkers so thick that bombs couldn't touch them. If those Nazi strongholds weren't destroyed, the Atlantic would never be safe. And so, once again, the call went out. For the men who fought in silence. The men who made war beneath the sea down after the beaches of Normandy were secured. The war was far from over. Deep along the French coast, the Nazis still held a secret, one that could keep the Atlantic bleeding for years to come. In the towns of Saint-Nazaire and Lorient, Germany had built massive U-boat fortresses, bunkers so huge they looked like cities carved from concrete. The walls were over 20 feet thick, the roofs reinforced with steel. Even a direct hit from Allied bombers couldn't crack them. These were the beating heart of Hitler's submarine war, where U-boats were repaired, refueled, and sent back out to hunt Allied convoys. To truly choke the Nazi war machine, those fortresses had to be destroyed. But how do you destroy something that can't be bombed? The answer came from the CDOT in late 1944. The underwater demolition teams were called upon for a mission so secret it would be buried in classified files for decades. A small group of UDT divers joined forces with Britain's Special Operations Executive, the SOE, Masters of Sabotage and Espionage. Together, they would attempt the impossible, sneak into the fortified submarine pens and plant explosives beneath the structure itself. The plan sounded insane. To reach the bunkers, they had to swim through pitch-black underwater tunnels, past rusted barriers, electric cables, and mines. They wore only wetsuits, carried small cutting torches, and a few pounds of C2 explosives each. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face, one diver later wrote. The only light was the glow of your own watch, ticking away the seconds you had left. Night after night, they slipped in beneath the surface, avoiding German patrol boats and spotlights. Some missions failed before they began, tides too strong or cables too thick to cut. Others succeeded in silence. Charges were set beneath the support columns, at the intake tunnels where seawater cooled the U-boat engines. They waited. The blasts came just before dawn, columns of smoke rising from the sea, flames bursting through the concrete mouths of the U-boat pens. Parts of the massive structure collapsed inward, flooding repair bays and trapping submarines inside. For the first time, the Atlantic's deadliest bases had been wounded, not from the sky, but from below. But the price was heavy. Several divers never returned. Their names vanished from the records, missions erased, reports locked away under top secret. To the world, it looked like nothing had happened. But to those who knew, it was one of the most daring underwater operations of the entire war. No headlines, no medals, just silence, one survivor recalled. And in that silence, we knew we'd done something that mattered. These men had fought an invisible war. One fought not in trenches or skies, but in the cold, black waters beneath Europe's shores. And though their story was hidden for decades, their courage would inspire the birth of a new kind of warrior, the Navy SEALs. In every war, there are heroes whose names are remembered, and others whose stories sink beneath the tide. The divers of the underwater demolition teams were never meant to be famous. They worked without fanfare, without the promise of recognition, only the certainty of danger. Many never came home. Some vanished in the dark waters off France, their last breath swallowed by the sea. Others made it back to shore, only to disappear quietly into civilian life, never speaking a word of what they'd done. Their missions were classified, their sacrifices unrecorded. One man, however, would become the symbol of everything they stood for: Lieutenant Draper Kaufman. He was the architect of the UDTs, the man who believed that courage could be trained, and that the toughest warriors were forged, not born. Kaufman had already been captured once by the Germans in 1940, escaped, and returned to war to build the Navy's first demolition school. He demanded more from his men than anyone thought possible, because he knew their missions would demand more than any man could give. If you want to find courage, Kaufman once told a recruit, you have to go where fear lives. Another name whispered among the survivors was Chief Petty Officer Francis Fane, a quiet man who completed over 70 missions in the Pacific and Europe. He later wrote The Naked Warriors, a memoir that pulled back the curtain on what it meant to fight in silence. In one passage, he recalled a night dive in enemy waters. The sea was black. You could hear your heart echoing through the mask. Every sound was a question. Is this my last breath? These men didn't fight for glory. They fought so others could land safely, so that the invasion of Normandy could succeed, so that the world could breathe free again. And when the war ended, most of them went home quietly, no parades, no applause. They blended back into the crowd, carrying with them the memories of a war that very few would ever understand. They were the unseen heroes, men who swam into darkness so that others could walk in daylight. Their bravery laid the foundation for something even greater, a new brotherhood born from the depths of the sea, a force that would carry their legacy into the future. The United States Navy, SEALs. When the guns fell silent in 1945, most of the world moved on. Cities were rebuilt. Flags were raised. But in the quiet corners of naval bases across America, the spirit of those underwater warriors refused to fade. The underwater demolition teams, the UDTs, had proven something extraordinary: that courage didn't need to be loud, that the deadliest missions could be carried out not with tanks and bombers, but with a handful of men, the sea, and their will to survive. Through the 1950s, the lessons learned by UDT veterans shaped a new kind of warfare: covert, surgical, and silent. They trained future generations to move unseen, to strike where the enemy least expected. Then, in 1962, under President John F. Kennedy's vision for unconventional warfare, the Navy combined these underwater units with elite commandos from other branches, and thus, the United States Navy SEALs were born. Every exercise, every dive, Every mission carried echoes of those first men at Normandy and Saint-Nazaire. Their motto, "The only easy day was yesterday," wasn't born from slogans. It came from the cold truth that the UDTs had lived. Every new day was a test of pain, courage, and survival. "We were the ghosts," one UDT veteran once said, watching modern SEALs train. They just gave the ghosts a name. Today, every Navy SEAL who dives into the ocean, every mission that begins under cover of darkness, carries the DNA of those forgotten warriors of World War II. Their blood, their grit, their silence, it all flows through the teams that still risk their lives in the name of freedom. They began as ghosts. They became legends. And their legacy still moves beneath the waves. The war has long ended, but the ocean still carries their names. Beneath these waves lie men who never came home. Men who dove into darkness so others could walk in the light. They were young. They were fearless. And they were the first to fight a new kind of war. One fought in silence. One waged beneath the sea. They didn't have modern gear. No oxygen tanks. No sonar. Just lungs, knives, and pure courage. And when the mission called, they went, knowing the odds, but never backing down. 80 years later, their story still flows with every tide. Because from their courage came a new brotherhood. From their sacrifice rose a new generation. Today, when a Navy SEAL steps into the ocean, he carries a piece of their spirit in every heartbeat, every breath beneath the waves. They began as ghosts. They became legends. And now they live on in every man who dares to fight from the sea dot. So when the ocean roars, when the waves break against the shore, remember the ones who cleared the path, the unseen heroes who made the impossible possible. The war may be over, but their legacy will never sink.